Callie Finn. So we just finished talking about the blockbuster trade that happened. Three-way deal that sent Jewel Lloyd to the Aces. It sent Kelsey Plum to the Los Angeles Sparks, and it left Seattle with the number 2 pick, but also some questions that need to be answered about how they're going to proceed. Okay? So I want to talk to you about the Aces because you cover the Aces. So we talked about like what was included sort of in the structure of that deal. One of the really big things here is that the Aces got back a draft pick because they were penalized. They were forfeited. They lost their draft pick due to findings from the league from an investigation, right? We've talked about this numerous times on here. So I thought it was huge that they got back this pick. And even though they gave up a 2026 pick, like I'm not even worried about that because I feel like you worry about that next year and you do something to get back. Like I think of it as like Joe Lacob, like, because the Aces remind me of like the Warriors, you know? And like the Warriors, so many years they don't have a pick, and like the NBA gives cash options to get picks, and they pay for, like, they always find a way, even when they lose their pick, to get a pick. So I feel like the Aces can figure out how to get a pick. So getting a pick this year to me was like really crucial, because obviously for their money and their salaries, you need like friendly contracts, but also this is a deep draft class. They are going to likely get someone who can contribute. So I thought that was huge, Callie.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about who or what they might prioritize in the draft, it's unclear. I think still at this point, because to me, and I wrote a story about this, like, yes, Kelsey Plum was a huge part of their free agency outlook and just like off-season picture. But now that that is taken care of, like the front court should be top priority for this team. And I don't know if that's something that they can really address in the drafts. I think bigs in the WNBA, it can take time to develop. And so you kind of saw that with the Aces this past season. They cycled through a few options in the post. They picked up Jessica Carter, then waived her. Then we ended up with Queen Egbo. And then she remained on the team but didn't get significant minutes. They'd also signed Megan Gustafson in the last free agency. And I don't think that she ever really gained Becky Hammon's trust. Of course, they have Kia Stokes, who is an option to like, create some space in the paint. But she against the Liberty, she didn't draw a lot of defensive attention. And to me, that was like glaring in that series. And Becky Hammon still played her pretty regularly. So I don't know if that's an indicator that she plans to stick with Kia Stokes for the foreseeable future. I know that Kia Stokes recently bought a home in Las Vegas and probably wants to stay. But
I
then they
thought that
also
was
have
an indicator she had no other options, but
I mean, right. And I think that you're probably right. I want to be like generous in my my I guess, analysis, or because to me it's like she said that she didn't have any other options, but like I mean, and I think Megan Gustafson, it was a pace thing. And then with Queen Egbo, it's probably just an inexperienced thing. But like she did have other options that she didn't give, like comparatively in the postseason.
You've won with Kia. You can trust her, you hope. And here's the thing, because I don't want to seem like I'm knocking Kia. Kia's season last season was not as good as their second championship when they won the second year, right? But I think many people, including myself, forget that she had an injury. She too was recovering the same way that Chelsea Gray was. And so I think it will be interesting to see what Kia is like this season. And of course, the Aces are in the best position to assess what she is. And like, she may not be a player that like they're going to get rid of, but maybe she ends up coming off the bench and they get someone, she helps to build out their depth because they've also always been a very top heavy team. So I don't want to suggest like she's not important to the team. She just was not as impactful as she was in the past. And it was kind of glaring and it showed. So no disrespect at all intended for Kia.
And there's another area where injury becomes really interesting for the Aces front court situation because they drafted Liz Kitley in the 2024 draft out of Virginia Tech. And obviously, I mean, she was incredibly impactful in college, just recently had her jersey retired by them like just a week ago or so. And I know Asia Wilson has expressed excitement about the idea of playing with her. I know that Becky Hammon has made it clear that they, would hope to sign her. It would just be your standard rookie scale deal because she was on a suspended, like she didn't get paid this past season because she was injured, but she still like recovered and things like that with at the Aces facility and like using their resources. So they've invested in her. I'm sure they want to utilize her. The thing that just kind of stands out to me is that Becky Hammon told me in a conversation in December that she imagines that with Liz Kitley's ACL recovery, she'll be playing pretty good basketball by June or July. So that doesn't mean that she won't start until June or July. I interpreted that to mean like she expects her to be kind of ramped up by June or July, but that still gives you, a month of WNBA season. If she's going to be your first option as a big, like you need somebody else to hold it down. So I think that maybe that could be Kia Stokes. I mean, Queen Egbo has been putting up crazy numbers overseas. I don't know what they're gonna do. And to be honest, their cap space picture isn't really generous right now because
That was
they
gonna be
have
my next question.
a whole bunch of other free agents that they need to figure out what they're doing. Tiffany Hayes is an unrestricted free agent. Alicia Clark is an unrestricted free agent. Sydney Colson is an unrestricted free agent. And obviously, those are players that feel so important to the team. But I think that when you're trying to, I don't know, make decisions and negotiate with the salary cap, we might end up with like a hard decision or two. And then you also kind of wonder like the Aces have been able historically to get people to sign for less than they normally would under market value. That's what we saw with Candace Parker. And obviously that deal kind of went under scrutiny with like Dearica Hamby's claims of impermissible benefits. And sometimes people will like combine those situations. I think the impermissible benefits were strictly with Dearica Hamby. I don't think that that applied to Candace Parker, but like it's something that people bring up a lot. Like, how did they get Candace Parker to sign for so much less than market value? And it kind of makes me wonder if they could pull something else off with like a big name. And that's something that I'll be really curious to see because you have some pretty established bigs available. Brittany Griner is exploring options. And I wonder if the Aces have explored options with her. I also know that like DeWanna Bonner, sources told me that she seriously considered the Aces when she was exploring free agency last offseason. And so, I mean, but those are people that you might have to shell out some money for. Same thing with like, this sounds crazy, but like Elena Delle Donne was listed on the ESPN's free agents,
Yeah.
and we don't know what's going on with her. That's somebody like maybe the Aces could pursue, but again, like they don't have a ton of money and they have other free agents that they need to pay. So the
Right.
front court situation could be really interesting.
The front court situation is really glaring. All the names you said were names I was going to ask you about, so I'm glad you brought up each one. So, like, Brittany Griner, I think it needs to be noted that she's taken pay cuts already in Phoenix, like, multiple times. So, I don't, I just don't know where she is. Like, I don't know if she's going to be willing to do that. And also, I do think someone like Brittany Griner is going to change a little bit how the Aces play. And I don't know if they're open to that or want that, right? Um, Even though this may not be the case, I think everyone is working under the assumption that like Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner are a package deal. So I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like all signs point to Phoenix. Like they're one of the few teams that have the ability to take on both of them. And with DeWanna already having like the history with them, it just seems like that's where it'll have to be, especially if BG leaves
Yeah.
and if DT isn't coming back. So I don't know. But we'll see. It'll be interesting. Elena Delle Donne is interesting. It's just you always have like the injury kind of factor with
Right.
her. And
And I don't know if that's a risk the Aces should be willing to take again after going so hard with Candace Parker and that paying out the way that it did. Like they really put all their eggs in that basket and then it didn't. That was, I think that set the foundation for a lot of the problems that we saw with their roster building this past season.
but that's something you can never like know, right? I mean, with Candace, it's a little different. But like, and I don't even understand why people are acting crazy. Like, we see players across leagues do this all the time. Candace Parker had won championships. She, like, for many, she's considered the GOAT. Like, she didn't need a max out. Like, she gets paid in a lot of other ways. We don't want players to have to do that. We want to get to a point that they don't have to. But she's a player who has the capacity to do that. So does Elena Delle Donne. You know, like, she's obviously like not as decorated as Candace, but like she's a very decorated player. And you know, she's had her own signature shoot. Like, she has the ability to also do that. I feel like she's the only one of the names you said that like would, like, I have no idea. I don't know anything. Like, I have no inside info. But like, I feel like if someone's in the position to do it, she's probably someone, you know? So like, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously some of the, like, even if you're not going for like, and I don't know if people still consider Elena top of the line because like her age and all the injury history, but like, even if you're not going for like a big name or like the top of the line, even like those middle of the pack people still might be hard for the Aces, right? Based on their salary cap.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's looking like $400,000 or so. Like, that's just not a lot of money, I think. And so, and again, that's also with them not signing the unrestricted free agents that they have. Like, there's just not a lot of money to go around. I don't know how they're gonna negotiate that. That also does include like Megan Gustafson's salary, which is unprotected, and so there are a lot of things that could happen. I just think this is going to be really interesting. We have until February 2nd for these things to start being like inked and official. And it seems like historically, like most of your major moves are like wrapped up by then. So we'll see. Obviously, that's just when that starts, like things can be official. But we might get news even after that. So I do think it's going to be really interesting as an Aces beat reporter because February, or maybe it's February 1st that the deals can be officially inked, but then February 2nd is A'ja Wilson's jersey retirement. So it's like all of these things are going to be swirling around the team, and she's just going to be like, la, 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 in South Carolina getting her flowers, which is going to be crazy because I'll be in South Carolina too, trying to like navigate it all. So it's going to be really interesting.
Yes, we have Callie live in effect covering A'ja Wilson's jersey retirement. I love that. Well, listen, I feel like based on this conversation and the players we discussed, like while we were waiting for the bombshell trade to happen for it to be the catalyst for the rest of free agency, I still feel like we still have more questions than answers. And like, not just for the Aces, but for many teams. We just brought up a lot of names. Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner. Where do they end up? What are the Mercury doing? Right?
What about Gabby Williams?
Oh, yeah.
What about Gabby Williams?
Because we haven't even, with the Storm? Right. We haven't even talked about Seattle. And so, like, Nneka is still an unrestricted free agent. Like, everyone talks like she's resigning in Seattle. And I think now with Jewell Loyd coming off the books, there's not going to be any questions around their ability to pay Nneka. But right. I guess what I question, like, Skylar Diggins-Smith is under contract. But Skylar's there to win, and Nneka's there to win. And I don't, and this is like no disrespect to this draft class that I keep calling talented, I don't see any player coming in ready to fill the void you lose when you lose a player like Jewell Loyd. Like, you know, they might go to like some players like Jordan, you know, on their team, like other players, like Ezzy had like an amazing season last year. So it's not like, you know, players develop and they can contribute more. So it may just be like a by committee thing where like other players get bigger roles. But like, I still think you need to replace Jewell Loyd's spot, which is why I also question, like, what is Seattle going to do with that number 2 pick? Because if like the players that are projected around 2 and 3, they don't fit on that Seattle team. And so do you draft for fit or do you draft for best available talent? You know, like people are like, no, you do for fit. And like, people keep this idea that people keep saying, like, you put Olivia Miles on the team and she can learn behind Skylar. I think I'm just triggered as a Warriors fan, but the whole like 2 timelines and trying to have like a player like that, like, I have to keep saying no disrespect because I don't want people to feel like I'm slighting anyone. So like, no, yeah. Like, Kate Martin can come in and learn behind players. Like, she wasn't expected to be drafted. You don't put a number 2 pick you're stunting their development if you're not playing. Lotto picks are supposed to come in and play. They're supposed to go to bad teams and be able to start playing right away. They're not supposed to go to teams that are expected to contend and get limited minutes. Do I think she would play? Yes. But like I understand that people think Skylar's getting older, but I'm watching Skylar in Arrival. She has a few years left. Right. Like, unless they're just ready to move off her, and then I don't think that, like, Nneka's gonna like that. Like, I don't know. When I say she's not gonna like that, everything about what they've both said says that they want to win. So I wonder if Seattle's gonna trade that number 2 pick to try to bring in, like, someone more established, or if they are going to draft for fit, because that could really, like, shake up the draft. So to me, there's a lot of questions around Seattle, you know? So there's just all these questions to be answered. I think free agency is going to be so fascinating. Like, I'm dying to get more of the answers.
To be fair, didn't Candace Parker say that Olivia Miles' game is like the most WNBA ready she's seen? Like, Candace Parker, I think that's somebody we got to weigh her voice pretty heavily. She had like one of the greatest WNBA rookie seasons we've ever seen. So
I'm not doubting that, but I'm talking about she can't play next to Sky. So, like, when I say they're both point guards, it's not like she's a combo guard or a 2. Like, so if you're bringing her in, are you benching Skylar Diggins? No. So that's what I'm saying. Like, and maybe she won't care. Like, she's definitely a student of the game. Like, I produce a podcast, Got Next, with Megan and Zora. People check it out if you're into college hoops. And she came on the show, and Megan and Zora interviewed her, and she said, like, she talked about Sue Bird and Chelsea Gray being 2 players she tries to, like, you know, emulate. So she's definitely a student of the game. And I'm sure who wouldn't like, Skylar's like very popular. We know players love her. But what I'm saying is, does she want to come in and come off the bench? Like, that to me, like, is a valid question. And not all lotto picks want to come in and do that. And I don't personally think that's the right thing to do. And then secondly, I do think, even though there were no findings, I do think that Seattle's reputation was tarnished a little bit. And even though there are no findings, there were still allegations against you. Is that the best place and environment for her to go into? You know, because she needs development. She's a young player. And aside from Nika Mule, right? Like, they don't, like, she's a young player. Like, it just doesn't even fit the timeline based on their current roster structure. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Not because Olivia won't be good, but, like, I just think based on moving Jewel, that changes for them. They never used to have the number 2 pick. LA did. Having a young core coming out of LA made sense. Having it in Seattle doesn't make sense. It does make sense at number 3 in Chicago. So that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, questions above my pay grade, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I know, I think what you're saying is right. And sometimes, I mean, like, my dramatic mind is like, so do they blow it all up? Like, what do they, like, what does the storm do? And I'm sure I'm not the only person whose mind has gone there, but I do think it's going to be really interesting for them. I mean, boy, we're just in for an interesting few months, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Callie, this has been fun, pondering, pontificating. I like that word. All of the different potential scenarios. I need another trade. Because I want answers. I don't want to pontificate. I want answers. And I know when we get more trades, you will be back with me so we can break them down. And I know if there's anything we need to know about the Aces, you will definitely let us know. Is that correct, Callie Finn?
Absolutely. Lots of things to monitor with the front office, with the LVCVA sponsorships. I'm really curious, is Jewel Lloyd in line to get $100,000 next season? Like, those are the types of things that
was that ever resolved?
And no, girl.
Okay.
No.
Okay, we'll leave that there. Another conversation for another day. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Callie Finn, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to chatting with you more during this free agency season.
Thanks.